exchange down there. So anyway, so Stargate, within a couple days of the new administration, they announced 500 billion for data centers, right?
Mm,
And then the continuation of mRNA injections, which of course I believe is the Internet of Bodies.
mm.
So
Yeah,
if you don't understand what I mean by that, go. Purdue has the Center on the Internet of Bodies in their engineering school. So go.
I've been writing about this. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So they announce, okay, data centers and Internet of Bodies. Okay, so that's the first thing. Then they're pushing the digital ID like crazy, and they just did a new executive order pushing the digital ID. They're trying to get everybody on the real ID system. So the first thing you need is that digital ID, but then you need the data center infrastructure to back up and deal with all the data. Okay. Now, in the meantime, another very key thing you need the central bankers to control fiscal policy, which means you have to finish destroying the civil service. And
Mm.
I would say Doge is, they are working hard to do that. Doge is a much more complicated story. They're trying to get the current expenditures down, and if you're going to go from a unipolar model to a multipolar model, there's all sorts of expenses that are a total waste.
Mm.
So Doge is trying to cut expenses and I think engineer a switch to corporate contractors running everything in the civil service, basically not being there to implement congressional will. So you're moving fiscal policy into the control of the bankers. And as a practical matter, it's pretty far that way now because we're running at such big deficits. The minute the central bankers decide to turn off the money, everything stops.
Yeah.
So Trump is completely dependent on two characters. He's completely dependent on the central banking system and the Fed, for his day-to-day provision to run the government. But from everything we can tell, this group is totally reporting to the Netanyahu syndicate.
Mm.
And I won't call them Israel because, poor Israel, you know,
Yeah.
if you think we have a tapeworm, they've got the tapeworm par excellence. So, Netanyahu and his syndicate, if you look at what he did during the pandemic, he was killing more Israelis than Palestinians.
Yeah.
So, that syndicate appears to be in total control day to day to day. And my concern is, Netanyahu wants Trump to engineer a war with Iran, and it looks like they're trying.
It does look that way.
Yep. And for the life of me, I don't see how they win. I think whatever they do, unless they have a pretend war, which, Trump has been known to do, then, if you try to have a real war, since you can't put boots on the ground, you're going to lose. And if you lose, I can see how it makes the neocons more powerful in terms of economic plunder. But the only way, your next step, you have two choices. You can, because the East-West strategy failed, you didn't implode Russia. Now you've got to get Canada, Greenland, and Panama because if you
Mm.
can't go east-west, you're going to go north-south. So Trump is being very open about educating the American people about, what you need to keep the model going. If
Right.
But while you do that, their plan is clearly to plunder their own populations. They've been plundering all around the world, and now they're ready to plunder certainly the U.S. big time. So they part of what Doge is they're just going in and stealing the data. I
Mm.
mean, that data to Musk's XAI and X,
Mm.
he's out in the market raising capital for those things now, and stealing all that data and putting it in his AI is dramatically would skyrocket the capital value of that stock.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think they're just privatizing. They if you look at the 21 trillion, they've stolen everything you can kind of steal with the money, or a lot. But now you can steal the data and the land and mineral resources. So I think they're going to plunder the balance sheet. That's what they're doing. I think they're working on a plunder plan. Now, will they get away with it? I don't know. Crypto is a big part of that, and but the core thing they need the crypto to do is to extend the dollar system. And so if you look at their plan to extend stable coins globally, it's
Mhm.
very clever, and it could give the dollar a much longer life.
We shall see, huh?
Right.
This has been an illuminating discussion. May I close up with just one more question?
Sure.
I mean, do you have any thoughts on how best to awaken people from this, what seems to be a daydream or a fantasy world that all these technologies we've been talking about and policies are necessarily beneficent?
So here's my recommendation. The first thing you want to do is always tell the truth. But you want to tell the truth to people in a way that is useful for them. So a lot of times what I think about is how can I use my knowledge to help somebody in the way they wish to be helped?
Mm,
So I think you need to respect that most people feel overwhelmed and busy, and you need to feed your knowledge to them in a way that they find most useful.
mm,
The second thing I find is that there are people who want to know and people who don't want to know. And if you spend all your time educating and helping the people who do want to know, you're going to get a lot more done. And what's going to happen is all the people who didn't want to know are going to watch you, and the people who, here's the thing. If you look at food, health, energy, shelter, community,
mm,
the people 3 years before the pandemic who wanted to know, when
mm,
the pandemic hit, they surfed the wave and did great. Just, they did great
mm,
because they understood how to use their time productively: food, health, energy, shelter. They didn't get, so many people got just slaughtered. They
right.
didn't get slaughtered. And the most heartbreaking thing they had to deal with in the middle of that success was watching family and friends basically kill themselves.
Mm,
Whether it's kill themselves economically or kill, but it was because they didn't, you know, they were killed not by a vaccine, not by, change in business circumstances. They were killed because they had a bad map. And the reason they had a bad map is they didn't want to know.
mm,
So when you see what constantly happens to us at Soleri is people turning up and saying, I listened to you then and I thought you were crazy. And now I realize you were right. And if I'd listened to you, I wouldn't have lost my business or I wouldn't be disabled or, whatever.
mm,
What happens is as you help the people who will take action to improve their situation, other people see how successful they are and they want to get on board the train. So you have to build success, you have to lead with success, and you need to help them. The more and any business person will tell you this. You want to invest in your performers because they will lead the success, and other people will be drawn in to follow the success.
mm,
So, so what I try to do is focus entirely on the people who our education can make a huge difference because they will take action.
mm,
And that action makes a huge difference to their you know to their well-being. They don't fall for the financial frauds, they don't fall for the health frauds, they don't get tricked, they know how to navigate. I can tell you hundreds of stories of subscribers coming back with these amazing things. The precious dealer called me, and you're going to be angry. I did talk to him, but I knew they were using entrainment on the phone, and I didn't fall for it. I didn't say yes. I hung up because I knew they were using entrainment. So you get these little tidbits, and you say, "Okay, it's working." So I think it's very important. What I do is if I'm in a group of people I have no interest in knowing,
mhm,
I never or I rarely try and interrupt their flow to introduce reality. Now, I will occasionally when I see them planning on doing something that's going to kill a child. It's just like I can't I can't stand to sit and do nothing.
right.
Right. But and there's something else you have to learn how to do, and I really had to learn that because remember, I I went from a person who had a Rolodex of 5,000 the most powerful people in the world to somebody that no one would even talk to. right. I was shunned by everybody and everything with rare exception. The only people who talked to me is somebody I paid. Right? So that was my life. So, uh, and I was lucky because I had some people in my family who wouldn't drop me. And the reason they wouldn't drop me was I had been wealthy and I had always been very financially generous with anybody in my family who needed or wanted help.
Mm.
And so I had a wealthy uncle who said, look, she didn't ditch us, so I'm not going to ditch her. But and it was interesting because over the 11 years that I litigated, people gifted or repaid me. I had gifted or lent 250,000.
Mm.
Over the 11 years, that 250,000 came back, saved my life. If I hadn't put that 250,000 in the people bank, because the people bank is the one bank they can never control or shut off.
Amen.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there you go.
Human beings.
Human beings who are trustworthy.
Yeah.
I got people all around the world who got little pots of cash from me, and there's no record, there's no agree. It's just based on trust.
Mm.
But if I'm in your community and I need, money for a motel, I've got some stash.
Catherine Austin Fitz, thank you so much for the talk. Really,
Well, thank you so much for your work because when you first published that article, Mass Formation versus Mass Atrocity,
mm,
it settled the argument in the health freedom movement and it caused a huge shift in paradigm. And I'd been trying to do that for 2 years, but I just didn't have the scholarship that you and your colleagues brought to the table. And but you just put it over the top, and you saved me from chronic frustration. 2 years of chronic frustration watching people get tricked. So I really appreciate you, Daniel. It's been a thrill to,
yeah.
and I apologize. I kind of talked your head off, but
No, it was wonderful, wonderful talk. I really appreciate it.
okay. Well, my prayer for you is you're going to fall in love with money, master it, and it'll just help you with your work that much more.